Hello, everyone, and welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast where writers sit around drinking tasty beverages to talk about writing, publishing, and the whole creative process. There may be rants and raves and opinions that, well, might not agree with one another, but are lovingly delivered. We do not censor ourselves, so consider us PG-13, and there is the occasional trigger warning, so be a grown-up. This is episode 214, interview with Jim C. Hines. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
I'm so delighted to meet you at last. You are the author of a princess series of fairy tale retellings, and that is so my inner geek bag. Wow, princess retellings are the best because fairy tales are popular, but Disney keeps getting it, I'm just going to say it, wrong.
That's actually one of the big reasons that I wrote those books. My older daughter was very young at the time, and she was going through that princess phase, and Disney princess and Barbie princess and princess toothbrush and princess tissue boxes. I didn't want to be the kind of father who says, no, you can't watch this. You can't be into this. But I did have a sense of, okay, if you're going to get into the princesses, I want to write some princesses that kick ass and, can be a little more of a role model, let's say.
Well, that's fair. And I could easily dive down into shall we look at how Germanic and French and Italian and Spanish princesses were kind of on the victim side, whereas I like the Slavic side where the women become secret and powerful and the princes are, questing, and at least they're brave and they promise to marry every girl who helps them. And then they do because, they're princes. That's what you do. But it does seem that princesses got, a little bit victim-y. And I love that you take that back in, especially this first one starting off, the stepsister scheme. Wow. It was so neat.
And to be fair, I think in recent years, some of the Disney and some of the DreamWorks has gotten a bit better. But
I will. Moana kicks ass. Well, kudos to Moana and Merida. I liked Merida too.
Oh, yeah. She was fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to go back before Disney, dig up these older tales and then not just retell the same stories that we've already heard, but sort of do a what comes next. And somewhere in the process of coming up with these books, I got this image of a Charlie's Angels type team, with Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella going out and fighting crime and stopping magical bad guys. And I love that team up. And I love those three characters together.
Oh, it absolutely works because they're so very different. I mean, the fun for me was because I said being a geek and reading every single set of fairy tales I can get on. Cinderella is one of the oldest ones. I mean, she was around and 2,000 years ago, there's Cinderella-like stories, weren't there?
Oh, yeah. There's some very old ones. Sleeping Beauty, likewise. There are a lot of much older versions in different cultures, some of them much darker than others.
Oh, yeah. I mean, from Dorothy Parker's poetry, that's where we got Aspasia. And then, I'm trying to think out how you would say her name. Nick Mamadis would tell me, Rhodopis, a couple thousand years ago, the young girl that catches the eye of some social climbing, prince sort of thing.
Yeah, there's just so much to work with. It's very rich.
It is. Did you look into some of I have a lot of people from further in Asia on my hockey team. So they told me about Ichuan, which is Cinderella, only I think they make fish sauce out of the stepsisters.
Ooh, no, I don't think I came across that one.
Yeah, Chinese and Korean are both very big on, we'll turn them into fish and then we'll make some kind of, garum out of them or something.
Man, I should have done this interview like 15 years ago when I was writing these books.
Well, it's never too late, and I want to inspire you to do more of them because, wow, there is some dark, delicious magic out there.
Oh, yes. And who knows? There's always room for book 5. Stories are never really done,
Exactly. And maybe, I'm not almost imagining if you have Cinderella, what if she ran into all of the other Cinderellas? Not like a trope sort of thing, but I think Fables was one of those comic books that went out and was talking about, Snow White was the lead on that one and Bigby the wolf. And they were looking about incursions. Oh, we got a Sleeping Beauty coming up over here.
And the whole multiverse thing has been big in recent years.
Absolutely. All of the Cinderellas of the world. I mean, come on.
Oh, that actually sounds like fun. I have another book that I need to pitch and get to my editor, and she already said she wants it. I can't do another new book right this minute.
Well, not right this minute. I mean, and you've been around for a long time. You won a Hugo in 2012, I believe, Best Fan Writer, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Can I ask, when does one stop being a fan and get to be called just a real writer? Because I think you blew past that signpost years ago.
Well, that's a fair question. Yeah, and I'd argue that most of the writers I know are also fans.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
don't,
Unabashedly.
yeah, you don't spend years at a time writing these books if you don't love the stuff.
Yes.
But in terms of the fan writing, there's definitely been some debate and discussion and some grumbling. For me, it was just a very clear line between over here is my fiction, my books, my short stories, the stuff that I'm doing as a quote unquote pro writer. And then over here is more of the commentary, more of the stuff that I'm writing about the genre,
Right.
putting stuff up on the blog, writing articles like that. And that year in particular happened to be the year that I decided to try and start discussion about the way women were posed on book covers. And I did this by,
Thank you.
uh,
Go on.
yeah. And so, yeah, I tried mimicking the poses. I may have injured myself once or twice, but put all of these on the blog online to try and make it more visible how ridiculous some of this was.
Yeah.
And I think that was very much more on the fan writing side, the critique side. It's nobody was paying me to do that. Believe me, nobody
It,
was paying to
it's
see
still,
me.
I think, God's work. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. It
It's
was definitely fun.
Well, one of the things that I liked, and this one was pure, I've been saving up this compliment because I really wanted to say it. You write very, very believable female characters. And that has not been true for me in the decades that I have been a fan of fantasy and science fiction.
Thank you.
They're believable. And I cheated and I stalked you a little bit, and your psychology degree shows. And honestly, probably your training as a crisis counselor as well. I had a
That may leak in.
midnight stint answering the phone for Jefferson Center for Mental Health in Colorado. So, yeah, there's a lot out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's everything from, okay, are you feeling suicidal right now? And we're going to the callers where you have to say, okay, stop. Are you masturbating right now?
Yep. Yep. And that these are, I mean, they're real people. If you look at every single human being you meet as being a potential book character, and we all do. I was raped by an entity in my bathroom and he didn't touch me. Do you think I'm crazy? That's actually, I'm not qualified to make that distinction, but I've got Cece on the other line. Let me bring her.
Yeah, that's above my pay scale.
Yeah, I'm not paid to know that, but thank you for telling me this. And I thank you for trusting me enough to tell me this. And you bring that in. These are grown up fairy tale books. I mean, Sleeping Beauty. Yeah, sure, we had Anne Rice writing as a different one, do the claiming of Sleeping Beauty and turn it into porn. But there is a lot about what happened in the old traditional elements. And I like that you sort of nodded to each of those, that Sleeping Beauty was Talia. And yes, that was absolutely one of the names of the many, many Sleeping Beauties that have been out there.
Yep. And yeah, I believe the story that I was drawing from was Sun and Moon and Talia. And it it does deal with Talia being raped. She's awakened basically by the process of giving birth to the twin children that she was impregnated with.
Did you get the baby sucking the flax out of her skin from the old Perseforest? Oh, no, you probably went for Jim Batista. Sun, Moon, and Talia.
I'll be honest
Yeah.
and say I don't remember. Yeah, I remember reading that detail in one of the stories, but it's been long enough. I don't remember which one came from where.
I loved that you quietly made her a lesbian. That was magnificent because it's just who she was, and you didn't have it central. There was no different way of how she behaved. She just was a get shit done kind of gal.
Mhm.
Loved that character.
Looking back, there are a few things that I would probably do a little bit differently with her. I mean, I love Talia's character. She's kind of my favorite, but at times I think she fell a little bit into the stereotype of the angry lesbian, the sort of, and I got some feedback about it. And on the one hand, Talia has every right to be angry.
Yep.
And this is who she is. Her character is the fighter. She is, she was blessed with these fairy gifts that make her incredibly graceful and coordinated. And she's a pretty badass ninja type character.
She is.
But I do also see where she falls closer to certain stereotypes than I intended.
Fair, but you did not fall into the biggest one, which is that forced sex becomes the sole motivator for a female character, and that makes me crazy.
Oh, God.
Absolutely
Yeah,
nuts.
rape
So
as a plot device.
it's sort of like, you don't have to refrigerate the girl or dog in a male hero's life in order to motivate him to proceed with the story. It's like rape and fridging. What if we just skipped it entirely?
Right. And it's not that you can't write about rape and assault, but are you doing it to motivate the character? Are you doing it to motivate the character's boyfriend, which even worse? Are you doing it because, well, that's just what's expected?
Well, that's, the country song, sometimes you have to fight to be a man. And like, really? You could have stayed home with her and held her and dealt with her and given her the courage to call the police.
Yeah, you've got a lot of options there.
There's so many options.
And letting women be their own characters instead of just another plot device for the male hero, I think is big. I think that's one of the areas that we run into people writing women so badly is they're not a character, they're a plot device, they're a motivator, or maybe they're a reward.
Or a reward, or just, okay, she's a 5'10" Yes. No, that's when I really liked that. And the fact that you made all of the women in the book are three-dimensional and they all have their own motivations and they're all doing quests for their own reasons. Even the stepsisters. I mean, that first one about the evil stepsisters are complicated, that they have. Yeah. So maybe they're not the best people in the world, but what is your sense of grievance? How did you get a sense of grievance? What fuels it? What makes them happy? What keeps them going? And I always talk to people and say, hey, what are your villains doing? Why are they doing it? If you don't know that, you don't know your villain, really, do you? And you knew your villains, Jim. I love that.
Oh, thank you. I think it comes back to the same thing. It's respecting them as characters, as people. It makes the story more interesting. You said you'd only read the first book so far?
The rest of them are now sitting in my library waiting for me. So you got me to invest a fair bit. I'm just saying, out there, fair warning, you're going to want to buy them all.
Okay.
You can spoiler for me just a little bit if you want to. I'm still going to read it.
Oh, how to do this carefully without spoiling things. The first book, I mean, it's obviously the stepsister scheme. It's about Cinderella's stepsisters. The stepsister issue does crop up again in a later book too. There's a little bit more to that story.
There are other stepsisters in different places in different books. I mean, I think one of the beautiful things that we can look at fairy tales and say, throughout history, the simple nuclear family has never been standard for everybody, especially not when you get into royalty. So I mean, yeah. Come on. As much as I hate the Tudors, I have to say at least it's, a guy behaving very badly and a whole lot of like breasts jiggling. And at the same time, they're different people. And that's not a central family. That's not a loving, nurturing environment. And are there any loving, nurturing environments is a whole different idea. But all of these things that make different people react different ways. I love the neurospiciness that's coming out in books now that we didn't see in the 70s and 80s. I'm sorry, we really didn't.
No, I definitely understand. I grew up reading science fiction in the 80s, maybe not so much in the 70s, but yeah, just the stuff we were reading back then compared to some of the exploration going on, with social society rules, with families, with, whether found families, romance, it's just so much broader now, and I love it.
It feels like you and I were the kids that were saying, but why? Well, they did this, but why? I mean, I hate to pick on John Steinbeck, but my husband was having me reread Tortilla Flats, and in the first 4 pages, I'm like, but why? There's no motivation. That's, it's like this event happened, and then this event happened, and this event happened, but I'm going to describe it in an obscure way, and this happened. And like, none of it is about people. None of it is how people develop and what they're thinking and how they're feeling and how that changes what they do. And I feel like you put that into your characters, and I love that.
I think everybody has their own preferences for what they're looking for in a story. And For some people, it's yes, I want the minutia of whaling and the 20 pages of detailed description in Moby Dick about how the process of harvesting the whale oil goes. For me, I like the characters. I like the people. I like the dynamics and the interactions and the conflicts between them. And I also like getting a sense of hope and connection. And one of the reasons I've very rarely done grimdark is just that's not for me.
It also is, there was something that struck me when I was reading the Arne Thompson Uther Index of folk texts and the different kinds. And like, I just paused for a moment on the Cinderella page, and like Norway, Russia, Serbia. There is a Native American version in a couple Zuni and Turkey girls and this and that. But I like the stuff that authors like you and Ursula Vernon is doing some, and Robin McKinley did some, of saying that we can own these tropes still. These tropes are still important. And why don't we make them to something that we can all understand and relate to? And some of the sophistication of the reader has changed over the years. I mean, what was good enough for me when I was 10 years old, devouring everything that my dad had in the science fiction collection, it's not quite enough anymore,
Oh, yeah. There are definitely some books that I read when I was much younger that I went back to them and tried to read them and just noped out by the end of the first chapter.
Yeah, it was great the first time, but it's like I've grown up a little bit. I think I've outgrown John Campbell. Sorry.
No, you're allowed.
But of all of it, it was interesting for me reading it because I really get sucked because I used to collect fairy tales from all over the planet. And I think Snow White is the youngest of the legend. I had never found anything on Snow White earlier than about 17th century. She's complicated. She's very Baroque.
She's definitely complicated in my version too.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to think back to the different versions and the different research. I know that in a lot of ways, Snow White, I don't want to say she's the most broken of the three.
No, I don't think broken is the right word, but
no, she's struggling more.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And maybe that's what I love for the modern reader of looking at this, if they can see that, and there's going to be somebody in your books that they can say, yeah, I kind of identify with that.
I hope so.
They reminded me a little bit of, did you ever read the Fables comic books?
I did not. Fables was big as I was writing these books, so I deliberately avoided them.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair.
I didn't want the cross-contamination. And I knew I would be reading it and go, oh, damn, that's brilliant. Why didn't I think of that?
Well, for lovers of Fables, that's when we say you're going to go love Jim, because they're not the same. Fables is set in like a modern New York City sort of thing, as if they were all still real. And yours kind of, they're not necessarily European, but they're set in sort of a mythic period in a mythic place.
Yeah, it's definitely its own world.
Yeah.
And each of the three princesses had their own homeland that they came from, and then came together working for Queen Beatrice.
Do we get Beatrice in a later? Again, not that a spoiler, but do we learn more about Beatrice? Because I just know there's more there.
We learn a bit more, yes.
Yay.
Nope, no spoilers.
No spoilers.
But yeah, the second book is called The Mermaid's Madness. And that one, the whole book came about from reading Hans Christian Andersen, from actually reading the original The Little Mermaid. And somehow I had never read it until I got writing these books.
It's fairly horrific.
I got to the end of the story and I just said, oh, hell no. No, this is messed up and I'm writing something about it.
As you should, because, I mean, I always approved far more of Melusine and the French version of mermaids than what Hans Christian Andersen did to them. I mean, I've seen the Little Mermaid statue, and it's a very small thing sitting in Copenhagen Harbor looking out over to sea. And it's like, you're struck with it. I'm like, that is not a happy little girl that lived happily ever after. Nope, she did not. No. All of the mermaid wives are basically, I'm sorry, there's a lot of boys behaving badly. You know, the silky wife, the mermaid life. I'm going to steal your skin and keep you here raising children forever. There's a lot of really darkness in fairy tales.
Well, and that's some of what fairy tales were supposed to do, was warn people, warn kids, hey, there's bad stuff out there. You've got to be careful about this, or else you will get baked in an oven, or, raped and assaulted, or killed, or all of these horrific things that can happen.
Be nice and polite to little
Hmm.
old ladies you meet in the woods. I think that is a core sentiment that we can all agree on. Don't be rude.
Yeah, it's Will Wheaton's law. Don't be a dick, just in fairy
Yeah,
tale form.
yeah, exactly. And I love that you're going with the mermaids after that. And again, if you only have four, I'm hoping I can inspire you to do more because once you start really digging into all of these, there's some fascinating princesses out there that need their stories updated. They really do. They were trapped in their time, trapped in their place. Did they live happily ever after? What is happily ever after really?
That's one of the themes. Yep.
Because there's always going to be politics. I mean, one of the things I loved about The Witcher, the original books, is when Andre was writing about it, he took all of these fairy tales and he made them with real politics. I mean, like the Pied Piper of Hamelin, I'm going to stiff you. We're not, town's decided not to pay you. Oh, well, I'm going to steal all your kids. And that was the most real of all of the ones I ever read.
Back to that basic lesson of pay your contractors.
Exactly. Now, you have a few other series out there, and the Magic Ex Libris, I don't have those yet, but I'm going to have to because I love urban and book-based fantasy. You had something called Janitors of the Post-Apocalypse. That looked hilarious. And you have some YA fantasy books. I was going to ask, how do you approach young adult fantasy outside of simpler sentence construction? What's your way of making it different?
I've got 2 middle grade books out so far, a third being shopped around. So cross your fingers for me.
Crossing?
I think part of it is it's a little shorter. The overall plot structure can be a little more straightforward. I'm able to indulge my humor a little bit more
Yeah,
because a lot of the time I have a 12-year-old sense of humor.
can relate.
And if I'm writing for 12-year-olds, then this is golden.
Potty jokes. Sorry, they're real. They're
Oh
always
yeah.
funny.
Yeah, the dragon comes into our world and gets trapped going through the sewers. And he starts out in the storm sewers, but he ends up in the bad ones.
Yeah, you think it's a good idea until these are people that have never been in a sewer because, oh dear God.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I see people in any kind of a series going down and looking for alligators or something in the series, and they're not pausing to put something like Carmex up their nose or something.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go on down there without an N95 mask. They're not just for COVID, people.
But it's funny to write about.
It's true.
And I think in some ways that's the biggest thing with the middle grade is I feel like I'm a lot more free to just have fun with it because I think kids are more open to appreciating that. Whereas with adults, they still enjoy the fun, but
I don't know.
I don't know.
I think keeping your childlike wonder, your inner 12-year-old, any gender, ungendered, it doesn't matter. Just be 12 because that's how you should look at the world and realize, hey, marketing team, they should not use that. That's a stupid idea. I work in IT security and somebody actually had big data security management. Like, no, who let that get onto the page? No, these are acronyms that just need to be no, people. No.
Maybe part of it is, I mean, I agree about needing that sense of fun and wonder as an adult, but when you're writing for adults, you have to be a little bit more deliberate, a little bit more careful about getting to that sense of wonder. Kids, it's more on the surface. It's easier to reach. Adults, you have to work at it a bit.
I could see that. I want kids like it fairly be straightforward in a basically causal universe, and adults can be a little bit more complicated.
I think you develop some cynicism. You've got, well, I'm 51. I'm dealing with mortgage payments and politics coming through the news feeds and all of that. It is a little harder to get my wonder on sometimes.
I can see that, but maybe that's why we need books like yours to bury ourselves in a little bit of wonder somewhere off planet, cleaning up a mess that humanity left somewhere else because it all makes it less immediate for us,
Yeah, I've had my stuff classified as escapism sometimes,
Woohoo!
which I love that. We need to escape sometimes. We need a break. We need to get away from this and sort of recharge, refuel.
I mean, if you want to dig into the world right now, you read Cory Doctorow, but there's days that as much as I love Cory, I can't. I need something not the real world today.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about it. So besides inspiring and pushing you to, write a book 5 on this, What else do you have going on? What are you working on right now?
Well, I had a few slow years with some personal and medical family issues. I am working on getting back on track. I actually have two books coming out this year. At the end of May is a standalone fantasy called Kite Master, and I have been working on this book off and on for a very long time, and I am so excited it's finally coming out. It is, I would say more than anything else, this is sense of wonder distilled into story form. I love it. It has flying kite ships, it has dragons eating stars, it has sky pirates. I'm excited about that one. And
Nice.
then in October, another standalone called Slayers of Old, which is three retired urban fantasy type heroes and heroines who started a little bookshop together. And they're all in their 50s or 60s, or Temple is actually 99. And they end up having to go out and save the world one last time.
Well, as you do, and I approve of older characters being. I'm in my 50s also, and so I appreciate any time somebody has somebody old that needs to save the world, and it's not just a 20-year-old with a magic sword, but somebody snarky.
There actually is, I think he's 18, and he does show up with his fancy magic sword.
Well, yeah.
And the three main characters just give him shit the whole time.
Excellent.
Like, a katana? What is this, Comic-Con? Come on, kid.
Excellent. Okay, I have to share something because I was yesterday years old when I realized that Bilbo Baggins was named after Falstaff, who referred to himself as a Bilbo, which was a cutlass that was built in Bilbao, Spain. How did I not know these connections in my childhood?
Well, I didn't know it until about 10 seconds ago. So
Isn't that the coolest thing
you're
ever?
ahead of me. Yeah. Where did you find this out?
Well, I was sitting there reading. I'm going to Bilbao shortly, and I was reading this, and they're like, "Oh yes," and it was even mentioned, the Bilbo mentioned by Falstaff in Shakespeare, and I'm like, "Wait, what?" Because I had never heard of the name Bilbo outside of Mr. Tolkien's very fine works, and like to find oh yeah, I remember that play, but I didn't remember Falstaff. Yes, he called himself a Bilbo. That's where he got it, isn't it? Because it's a flexible but very strong blade that doesn't break. That's Bilbo.
That works. Yeah.
So, I mean, lucky 10,000 can happen to anybody anytime.
I love that XKCD comic.
One of my favorite. I'll put a link if you haven't seen it at home. Speaking of which, we will put links to the fascinating things we discussed during this episode on our website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. Jim, this is amazing. What advice would you give to somebody else who maybe has been a fan and wants to jump from writing about books to writing what's in their head? What would you tell them?
Oh boy. I guess the main thing that I would suggest is write what you love. Write what's going to make you happy as you're exploring the characters or the world or the story, because this shit is hard and it can be discouraging. And honestly, I spent years trying to write what I thought I should write, with air quotes there. This is what is marketable. This is what these magazines are looking for. This is what will sell. And when I finally started having success was when I stopped doing that and just said, I'm going to write something for me. I'm going to write something fun. It happened to be this goofy story about a little nearsighted goblin runt. And I finished it and didn't really think it was going to sell, but it was so much fun to write. And I loved Jig and his little pet fire spider. And damn if that wasn't the book that sold. So yeah, write what you love, write what makes you happy, and then go from there.
I hear it, because Goblin Quest it's a fun trilogy, and it's something that makes you happy. So thank you for actually saying that. There's too many people are like, trying to, look at what people are asking for. That is the best advice, right? The stories you want to read. That's awesome. Thanks for joining us here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This has been a blast.
You've been listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the hosts. Our main web magic is cast by Deirdre Schween, and our sound engineer and backup web spiders are Dave Welsh, John Schmidt, and Ksenia Cherniewskia. Our intro and exit music is performed by Michael Engberg, who runs Tin Can Music School Down Under. Our podcast sponsors are Jackal Designs, The Bean Scene, Arm Street, and wherever you like to take your notebook or laptop and just write. And hey, thanks for listening.